Get a tax write-off.
Tax write-off, yeah. We'll give you,
I have a remote.
we'll give you a nice little letter for the IRS.
Good evening, everyone. We're going to call tonight's meeting to order. Cinda, will you please do the roll call?
Councilmembers Friend,
Present.
Harvey,
Present.
Rockert,
Present.
Saucedo,
Present.
Brackett,
Present.
Fitzgerald,
Present.
Malcolm,
Present.
7 present, 0 absent, Your Honor.
Thank you, Cinda. This is our in-depth meeting of the month, so we'll dispense with a lot of our formalities, move right along with the agenda. We've had a request to rotate item number 5 with number 3 for more information before the vote on the resolution. So, John, could you please come up and give us an update on Marv?
Certainly. Hello, John Cook, Director of your Water and Resource Recovery Facility. I should say our, shouldn't I? I live here too.
Yes, you do.
Thank you. All right. Okay, you surprised me. I wasn't ready. So our project is moving along swimmingly. Marv is moving along with new industrial customers that are calling us all the time. We have a lot of really big customers that are wanting to utilize our facility because there is no other source for food waste receiving in the area. So it's really exactly what we wanted, was for people outside of the city to start calling on us. So I'm not even chasing them down. They're hearing about it and they're coming to me. So that's really exciting. And we're out past 80 miles, approaching 100 miles away from us. So we're getting some good stuff. Grocery store waste will be really big. This is not something that we had originally planned to take because we didn't have a building, the facility large enough to have the big trucks drive in and dump. Now that we have the recycling facility, we will be able to do that. Just had a meeting with the Green RU guy, which is the one who does all the hauling for all the Hy-Vees in the area, and corporate Hy-Vee is talking to us, and the distribution center and everything else like that. So there's an awful lot of interest in that arena as well. But, you know, we talk a lot about the construction project and the different things like that, but Marv is not a construction project. Marv is more of a movement. This is looking a way to reduce food waste on multiple levels. You know, remember I showed you that EPA food recovery pyramid, if you remember in the budgets. Starts out with feeding people. Second thing is feeding animals. Well, I'm sorry, source reduction is the first thing. Then feeding people, feeding animals, and we're like the 4th best option. So we didn't want to just focus on that 4th best option. We want Marv to really be something that we can link the community together with all those sources of food reduction. So we're not going to be the primary. We're not going to obviously store food anywhere, but we are going to try to educate because this is a program that will really get people excited. It's really going to be something big. It's going to be a lot of media attention, and I don't want to waste it just on saying, hey, send me your food waste so I can make fertilizer out of it. You know, we really need to start talking about a different level of that. So we're going to work on that, and I'll be bringing more of that to you as well. You know, this is food bank, schools, churches, shelters, everything, all that kind of thing down the line. So it's important to generate that kind of community investment. So this is not an environmental program, it's a human program. And that's where we're kind of try to go. So that's really all I have to update. If you have any other questions about the construction project, which we'll be voting on, you can ask me now.
All right. Council, questions?
Yeah, I have not throwing a, are you getting so many customers you're gonna start running out of capacity?
Wouldn't that be great?
I don't know.
Yeah,
No, it wouldn't, actually.
It would. No, that means we have to open new digesters and we have to find out new ways of doing things. I think that would be
You're
something.
not getting close or anything yet, are you?
Well, we're not taking anything yet.
Right.
So the new digester that we're going to build should take care of an awful lot of that capacity.
Okay.
I think we'll really have plenty. The thing that's interesting is what we're going to feed these digesters and how we're going to do it so that we make sure we get the correct renewable energy credit that we want. So that's,
Obviously, this feedstock is not even similar hardly to what you're getting now, you know, sending through your system.
through the system, yeah.
'Cause,
That's,
you know, sewage versus food waste.
that's pre-digested food waste, we call
Well,
it.
that's true.
Any other questions?
I'm gonna have questions when we get to the contract, so if
Okay.
we can just get to that.
Sure.
We'll wait till
We'll
that.
wait till we get to that.
Thank you, John.
All right, I'm just gonna leave all my stuff here.
You might as well. So we're going to skip back to number 3. We have for City Council's consideration a resolution approving the contract and bond for the high-strength waste receiving station. Is there a motion to adopt this resolution as submitted?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
We have a motion by Councilman Brackett with a second by Councilman Spread. Now's your time for discussion. Santos?
In the contract, there was a couple different terms that surprised me. But I wanted to clarify to make sure that the completion and contract dates start January 30th, 2020, and the completion will be February 28th, 2020. Is that correct?
Is there a date wrong on there or something?
That's a month.
What it said,
It says it starts January 2020.
January 30th, 2020,
Oh,
and general conditions will start before February 28th, 2020.
no, I guess that's a typo.
What should it be?
Well, it's supposed to start now.
Okay.
So that's why I'm just clarifying before we sign this.
Okay.
And approve that. And then
Scrivener.
in the contract also reads that if they don't complete by February 28th, we will start, they will pay us $700 each day if that expires. And then it also goes on to say after completion, the contractor will pay for any punch list items that are not complete or neglect to refuse to do that is $350, which I'm really happy that the contract reads the dates that they shall pay if they don't meet. My question also, is this contract from Stanley's?
Yes.
Okay.
I guess I didn't read into the date. I didn't see the date that was wrong on there. That's,
Okay.
That's,
Well, just something that, I mean, it's already been notarized and it's already been,
Santos, are you talking about paragraph 4.2? Is that? Because I'm reading this contract.
it says
times and
contract dates, the work will substantially be completed on or before January
January
20th and
30th,
completed.
2020,
Yeah.
and readiness for final payment. I'm sorry, I'm in the wrong paragraph.
No, that's,
Okay,
that makes sense to me. It's
Yeah.
like saying that it'll happen before that date.
On or
that
before.
date. Not that it won't start until then.
Well, it says contract times.
doesn't say it's starting, and it'll be substantially
Substantially
complete by
completed.
then.
Right. So it makes sense in the contract.
So,
So that's what I wanted to
and
clarify.
that
When does it?
they're looking for final payment by February 28th, 2020, so there's a month to reconcile all that, but,
Okay.
yeah, the start date would,
It's basically when we agreed to it
As
and
of
as
D,
of,
yeah.
yeah.
as of now.
It's
Well,
not a
that's,
typo, it's
Those are
fine.
not typos.
I don't have it in front of me. I'm sorry. I didn't
No.
It's all
bring
right.
it, so.
That's, yeah, I think you just misread the paragraph.
I know the contract is dated June 13th
Yeah.
to start at this time, after the contract signed. I did read that part well. That was the part I was focused on, I guess.
yeah. Well, and then it goes on to say the progress payments will be done 25% or 20, on the 25th day by percentage of work completed. And my understanding is that then we will be utilizing Stanley's consultants as their engineer that will be the owner for the approval of that percentage completion.
They will approve final, yeah, they did.
So if they say that it's 50%, here is, $900,000 of the 1.7 million,
Correct.
they will be the ones that will be kind of representing us in that.
They make that determination. They're not running the project, but we can offer them that, and they'll give final approval to that. Their contract isn't in there. This contract we have with Stanley is not in this thing here.
Okay, well, that's why I was confused, because it says the article number 3.1 says the project has been designed by Stanley Consultants. The owner will administrate the construction contract. Owner has retained Stanley Consultants as the engineer to act as the owner representative. So that's why I'm saying this.
Correct.
Okay,
Correct.
okay.
Anything else?
No, I'm good with it. I like the contract because it allows the contractor to understand that we want that completed by a certain date. That would be fine for them to be able to say, hey, you didn't meet February 20th or January 30th. That kind of gives them a little more timeline to understand that we need to meet that time.
Yeah, and we anticipate this is only about a 5 or 6 month project. We had it set for like November, And because of the bidding that was going on, I said, let's just give them an extra like 3 or 4 months, just so they are comfortable, they're relaxed, they're not worrying, they're not gonna pad the bids to make sure they can get it done. I said, so let's push it back. We've waited this long, there's no sense in rushing the contractor so we can get a favorable bid, and we did. And I think that helped.
No, I think it is, and they're a very reputable company from what I researched on them, so I think it'll be a great finished product in the end.
Everybody I talk to wants it done like next month. I keep getting calls, when can I start bringing you stuff? So hopefully it's done
else?
sooner than that.
Nope, that's all I had, thank you.
All right, hearing nothing now, did you have something? Okay. Hearing nothing else, Councilman Spread, how do you vote?
Aye.
Councilman Harvey?
Aye.
Councilman Malcolm?
Aye.
Councilman Fitzgerald?
Aye.
Councilwoman Brockert? Aye. Councilman Saucedo?
Aye.
Councilman Brackett?
Aye.
The resolution is adopted with all ayes. We're going to move along to number 4. Next, we have a request to approve a letter of support for American Recovery and Reinvestment Act, a grant through the Iowa Energy Office of the Iowa Economic Development Authority to perform the pilot at no cost to the city for the biogas portion of the MARV project. Do I have a motion for this request? Second. I have a motion by Councilman Fitzgerald with a second by Councilman Saucedo. Is there any discussion? Hearing none? Or did you want to discuss
I
it,
don't know, do you
John?
want to hear anything about it?
Okay.
I guess I'm ready if you want.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The request is approved with all ayes. Now we're going to move on down to 6. John, are you doing that one as well?
Em?
We have a nutrient reduction study presentation.
Right. We approved in the budget this year to do a study on nutrient reduction that was required by the DNR in our permit. We have to tell them how we're going to reduce the nitrogen and phosphorus that we discharge from the facility. So we did a study a few years ago, gave us all these different options of how to do that at the plant, and then we asked for more time because they were all pretty expensive, you know. Some really simple ones started about $700,000, which wasn't going to do a whole lot for us, and went all the way up to almost $5 million. So we asked for an extension. That extension is going to run out in 2022. So we are trying to plan now to start getting some of these programs of what we're going to do in line. This is called an alternate nutrient reduction study, so that we can do things that are not going to be only at the treatment facility. We're actually going to do things out within our watershed so that we can actually affect more change, remove more nutrients, and hopefully save money. And that's the big part of this study. So we initially budgeted $90,000 to explore this. It was originally just the slough master plan, the slough to wetlands, and the effluent for irrigation. That was kind of where I had kind of targeted things, thinking that that was going to be what we were going to use. In further exploration, since that budget was approved, I've kind of talked to some of the engineers that were involved in getting the RFP together, and there is some opportunities, and with Andrew as well, our community development, found a farmer who's upstream on Mad Creek who's willing to give land for a sediment basin or some kind of a large wetland upstream of us. That would do a number of things. It could mitigate flooding in town. It could take out an awful lot more phosphorus, particularly, which is what we're really trying to target, than anything else that we could possibly do anywhere else. So I think it's a good idea to add that to something that we are going to do in this study, because to get the big picture, to really know everything that we have available, all the tools in our toolbox that we have to do nutrient reduction would be a good idea to have now. Also, we know there's an urban stormwater practices that we can do, and we wanted to focus on Iowa Field because that has been a thorn in everybody's side for a very long time. A lot of people flood when it rains there. Everybody along Iowa Avenue, I know people comes in, goes right through their garages and everything else. And then on the other side, of course, where it comes in down the street, I don't remember the name of the street right off the top of Amy, right? Floods there too. So I think there's a lot of opportunity to do an urban stormwater retention area and infiltration there, which will be a nutrient reducing properties, and it will actually reduce flooding as well. Wanted to add that to the project. So I told the engineers that we selected for this program to add that to the project and give me a price. So we had originally budgeted $90,000. The price to add these two other things brings the total project cost to $135,000. Sorry, $125,000. So there's an increase of $35,000. So the question I'm asking you, before I draw up the contracts, bring it to you guys to approve that, is to know if we want to do the whole thing, if we like to have all these tools in our toolbox, or do I pare down the contract? I can get rid of like the effluent irrigation portion of it, and we can probably get back down to that $90,000. I'd like to keep the sediment basin, especially in the Iowa field, because I think those are very vital to us. The effluent to irrigation is pretty neat. I think it's a really great reuse, which is what we're trying to do. Water resource recovery, which means instead of, the Mississippi River doesn't want my 5 million gallons of water a day, I guarantee you. But the farmers around here probably would, especially in drought conditions. I know it's funny to talk about drought conditions, but they're gonna happen again, more than likely. So I guess that's kind of the question we were gonna bring, we wanted to know. We could do it as a separate contract because I think they're all important tools to have. But I don't think it makes any sense to do two when we could just do either pare one down or just go ahead and let's get this thing done in one big lump sum.
Any thoughts? Go ahead.
Hi, John.
Hi.
You never come and ask for $5. I have no idea. Every time I see you, there's always big chunks of money. Is it possible for you to put together a contract for us to review and have it itemized out so we can actually have another, we're not under a deadline, right?
No, this won't happen until July 1st.
Okay.
After July 1st. The money is not available till then.
So can we have something from you breaking it down and itemizing it so we can look at it with another eye and then have another discussion with you and say, yeah, we like this, or, I mean, because I understand it's probably more expedient to do it as a package.
It would be cheaper to do it all together than to try to restart this again if we
Yeah,
wanted to talk about
but
it.
we might not have that kind of money available. I mean, because every time you come here, you ask for big chunks of money. So and you in the police department, so we're running out of money.
Just to be clear, we're not running out of money?
The one thing we haven't addressed, and we need to at some point, is we've already been through a budget process. Where's the funding coming from? And usually we hear that. Where are you gonna find the $35,000?
It would just come out of our operating fund. That's where that comes out of.
And you have enough for that, John?
There's almost $2 million in
I
there.
mean, without having to cut anything else out?
See, so that
30
probably would help when you break it down for us, then put the part in there where this possibly could come from, so we could see it. You know, I'm a visual person, so I see things
Sure.
and
Well,
processes are different.
I guess we've been dealing with, and not so much just lately, we've had other flooding situations. When Mad Creek does what it does, and it does well, we've talked for years about having a place out north of town to hold the water so that it doesn't come rushing down through town. Yep. Including that in this study would be excellent. The Iowa field, it's been bounced back and forth between school and city, and it's a green space. I don't know who owns the house currently, but a family used to own one of them that literally, and you must have talked to them, that they open up the front garage door and they open one up and back, and the water from Iowa Fields runs through their garage and out to Iowa.
Yep.
And there's others along there that not quite as nice. But doing something with that field to help mitigate would be excellent also. And if you could get it all packaged up into one grant type program, I think it'd be fantastic.
Well, this isn't a grant. We are.
No,
paying
I
for
know
this.
that, but you're trying to resolve some issues that have been going on for years in Muscatine, and these two areas are ones that have been an issue. Last time I saw Mad Creek go nuts, it wasn't pretty. We had box vans that just disappeared underneath bridges.
So, Part of the reason John is here is this will require a budget amendment. And to your point, this would require an amendment of the $35,000 to increase his budget with the funding coming from their operating fund. So after July 1st, he can do that. He can't start the contract until after July 1st because we don't have an opportunity to amend the budget at this point in time. So that's one of the reasons John's here tonight.
Yeah,
Other thoughts? Go
yeah,
ahead.
I was just gonna say, I support the concept of wrapping that all together, and as long as the money is coming from your operating fund, and with the budget amendment, of course, but we're not having to pull that from some other source, then I would support this completely.
To do the whole thing?
Yes, but, we've got a number of areas that I hear about regularly that, we end up with standing water or sudden, flash floods, so if we can look at, I don't know why I'm buzzing so bad tonight on this, but, yeah, if we can look at that and have a more comprehensive approach, that's something I'd like to see us do in other areas as well, so I appreciate that initiative on this.
We can do all of that, take effluent irrigation out and stay in $90,000. So the question really is, do you want to keep effluent irrigation
Yes.
in the program?
I would.
To be clear, what are we giving up if we say no to effluent irrigation?
That's the only thing you'll get rid of. You'll get everything else.
What does that mean to us?
Well,
It's water that's
We're-
not going into
we're- yeah, we're-
Mississippi, it's going
we
to.
would probably be the first community to do this in this era of nutrient reduction. And are you gonna be that community that says, we're gonna do everything that we possibly can? We're not, we're gonna be the one that says we're gonna move forward into the realm where nobody else goes. We wanna be that kind of community. We want to use this water for a practical purpose. Like I say, the river doesn't need it. Are we going to say, because it's right across the bypass, so we could go irrigate lands with the water that comes out of our treatment facility. That was kind of my point was that, this is a useful resource. This isn't waste water. This is good, clean water that we could be using for something else that doesn't need to go downstream.
And we
So
already have the pipes to put it,
everything is kind of in place.
it's already in place, because
Yeah.
we pumped this other stuff out there.
And we could always come back and do it later too, but heck, you got the team assembled. It doesn't mean we have to do effluent irrigation. This is just to study it, to see how much it's gonna cost and what it is. What's the best tools, what's the best bang for our buck? And that's always something we can come back for later and say, hey,
Right. So really on the budgeting side, the way I'm understanding this is it's not that John's asking for more money, he's asking to use money he has in his budget differently.
In July, you'll be approving, you would be approving the contract, and then in the spring or during the budget process, you would be, or following the budget process, when you approve the budget, you would be approving a budget amendment that included this
He's gonna be
additional
spending
amount.
down part of his fund balance to do this.
Right.
And we've already set a budget and we have limits, so that's why you have to have a budget amendment. So he has resources, let's just be clear where it's coming from and how we're gonna use it.
Right.
And then in March, you'll do a budget amendment
Okay.
to cover it.
Okay.
Sounds good.
No
Councilwoman
problem.
Brockert, how are you?
I have a question, John. Do we have any idea what sorts of limits the DNR is going to ask for when the permitting begins?
10 and 1 is the the numbers we like. That's 10 milligrams per liter nitrogen, 1 milligram per liter phosphorus in our discharge.
What is it now?
There is no limit now. I have no limit.
Okay.
But that seems to be what everybody gets. Now, unless you're going into some kind of a pristine trout stream, like up in northern Iowa or something like that, where they actually have like a 0.1 phosphorus limit and probably a 3 nitrogen. Those are not the kind of limits we're anticipating here. But that's where we're going to try to head. And better than that, we're trying to say overall we want to reduce nitrogen by 77% and phosphorus by 60%. So if we can get that realm as well, and the fact of the matter, or maybe I got that backwards, 60 and 77 for phosphorus. We are actually already reducing nitrogen more than 60%. So we've already hit that number really. Now, we might not do it every year, but we do it most years. So anything we do is really going to be easy. So this is mostly about the phosphorus recovery that we want to do. And sediment basins up in Mad Creek are the best. That's going to capture so much more phosphorus than anything else we could ever do. And there are grant potentials for us to use out in the watershed. Nobody's going to give me a grant to build something new in my treatment facility. So these programs could be paid for, not entirely, but I'm sure there's some grant opportunities that we're going to explore in this study as well.
Okay.
Councilman Harvey?
Thank you.
John, do I remember right that phosphorus is a problem within your treatment plant because it makes deposits throughout the pumps and the piping?
It's
Would this have anything impact on that? What's your,
No, the algae removal that we were looking at would have, that's not part of this study. We didn't include that in this study. Phosphorus, ammonium, magnesium, phosphorus, and ammonium are the three things that make this stuff called struvite.
there?
And that's what plugs all of our pumps and pipes and everything else like that. You take one of you take one of those away and you shouldn't form struvite. And if you can get phosphorus out before that goes in there, this is all after it's gone through the process in the effluent water. But it won't do anything to reduce phosphorus coming
Into your plant?
into the plant,
Okay.
unfortunately. Well, maybe it will. If we're pumping stormwater, it might. I don't know.
Just, where did you get the numbers?
For
Your estimates for your effluent of 35, and you said you were gonna reach out for contractors to get quotes to be able to do the work. So when they do the study, where did you get the estimates to?
for the cost of the study,
Yeah.
this is from Bolton and Mink that we selected to run this
So
study.
they've already given us a quote of
So
what that is.
when I had an estimate initially, I said, I did ask several people, several firms, how much would a study this magnitude cost? And they came up between $70,000 and $120,000. And I said, let's scope it to something under 100. We don't need to go too far. I just kind of picked 90 as the maximum, and that's what they've come up with. So we can do the whole study without effluent irrigation for about $89,000, and I do have that if you want to look at it. The other way to do it is do the whole thing for about $125.
I would rather do all of it. I was just wanting to make sure that, I know that the university, or Iowa State has done quite a bit on the effluent that you talked about, and nutrient reduction studies as well too. So I don't know if you had reached out to any of those groups to maybe look at seeing if sometimes they take on projects like that from a municipality standpoint and saying, hey, the group can do that as a, master's program, or depending on what their programs are, but it would be maybe something as a potential avenue to look at as far as exploration when you start getting into the implementation stage years down the road, or
Right.
months down, who knows?
And we did intentionally pick the team that had that kind of experience. This is, particularly one firm that has done a lot of work with Iowa State and was implementing the nutrient reduction study that we are currently working under. They were part of that.
Okay.
So that's why we selected them as well
I
to be
see.
a part of that.
Yeah, I would rather go towards doing the whole studies put together, in my view.
Okay?
Sounds like you have some consensus, John.
Is that a consensus?
forward.
Anybody not want to do it that way? Okay.
Oz asked for more information, but I heard nobody.
And I can get
Say
that,
that
I'll
they
get that
weren't
to everybody.
interested.
I'll put
That
that
sounds
out for
great.
everyone. Yep.
Thank you, John. Now, the Armor Commons sewer extension discussion. Is that going to be you, John, Andrew, Jody, who? Not you.
Why don't I kick it off, and then
All right.
and all of those folks are resources. So, as you may recall, the Arbor Commons project has received tax increment financing and from the city. There will also be a sewer benefit district with this project, in which we will receive $2,000 plus or minus back from each lot that's sold to repay the city's the sewer funds that are used. An issue developed in discussion, and that is the lift station, the pumping station. And John can probably speak better to the specifics, certainly than I can, but I'm going to say that the initial estimates were a canned pumping station, or a different pumping station. And as the city is taking over the pumping station at the end of this project, John worked with the engineering team and identified areas where the pumping station could be improved, so that it saves us in the long term when we take over the facilities. And we're recommending that the funding for this come out of the Sewer Extension Reserve Fund that the city has for extending sewer. And as we're asking for the additional cost in taking over the pumping station, we felt it was appropriate to come out of that fund. And that's our recommendation. So now if you have any specifics as to the items listed under added cost, I'm going to refer you to John on those specific items. And certainly we have Jeff Sorensen representing the owner here tonight, and Andrew as well. But
It was a
that
pretty big
is it in a
difference,
nutshell.
wasn't it?
150
Between the estimate and what it's going to be now.
148.5.
Pretty substantial.
148.5 of an increase or?
increase.
Of an increase.
But it made the pit bigger, and there was a variety of things that I think is advantageous.
The building that's being added is also part of that increased cost as well.
Now, you say $2,000 per lot.
That's the
Approximate
sewer
cost.
benefit district for the,
That will have nothing to do with this pump
that has
station?
nothing to do with the additional cost. That would come from the sewer extension reserve fund. We have a fund that's set aside for extension of
And-
sewer, et cetera.
As long as we have in the paperwork that if somebody buys 2 lots and puts 1 house, they will pay 2.
We talked about that already.
I know, I just want to make sure.
Yes.
Thank you.
I have a question, this added FRP doors, I have no clue what that is.
There you go.
Fiberglass reinforced doors, they're not steel doors.
Okay,
So pump stations are notorious for having rusty doors because of the gases involved. And FRP doors will not rust and look like really obnoxious doors that we have to paint every year. They're a little expensive, but you know what, at the end of the life of the thing, it's well
well, that
worth
makes
it.
sense to me, John, like I said, I didn't know what that is.
What do we need tonight, Do you need a vote? Do you need
We'll be bringing it
a
back for council action.
consensus? You're looking for,
We'll be bringing it back for council action at the next meeting.
okay. Any
We
other?
wanted to make sure there was
Sure.
council consensus before we brought it forward.
I do have some questions.
John, let me ask one additional question there. This backup gas generator and gasser, this is in case the electrical power goes out, you can use the generator to make it work.
Right, natural gas.
Okay, see, I'm catching up with you, okay,
Yes, yes.
thank you, John.
Anyone else have any questions? Go ahead.
The pumps that you spec'd out by the city, are those 2 pumps, I take it then?
2 pumps, correct.
Are they interchangeable or similar to any other pumps that we have in the city?
No, that's a different brand. We
That's why I'm asking.
We looked at the stations that I've used in the past, not here in town, but in my other jobs that I wanted, and that would have added almost an additional $100,000 to this project. But we found similar pumps that do the same thing, that we're confident in, and that should do just fine. So they're yeah. Sorry.
So technically, one will only operate and the other one will be a spare?
Correct.
Okay.
Backup.
And then my last question that we had on the backup gas generator, that's unusual. I don't know, have we ever done that on any pumps that we have for pump stations?
No, we usually use diesel, big diesel. This is a pretty small station, just a couple of pumps, so
Okay.
we thought the natural gas was a better fit for this. It's a lot less maintenance for us as well. We don't have to rebuild engines as often, and there's, no diesel to change out and run and all that other kind of stuff. So it's something that we probably would use, and we have looked at using in other facilities if we were to build new ones.
Anything else?
I'm good with it.
Any other questions? Sounds good. Thank you. All right, we're going to have a review of the capital improvement plan. Is that you, Lindsay?
Hello, good evening. In May, I presented a presentation on the FY 2020 to 2024 capital improvement plan, and just kind of went over the process that we took to update the document and the content that's included in the document. Council members should have received a copy of the draft a few weeks back for review, so for tonight, I would just ask if you have any comments or questions. I'd be happy to answer them, and that we get a consensus to move it along to the adoption process.
Thank you, Lindsay. Comments,
And
questions?
to date, I haven't received any, just,
Okay. I hadn't heard any either. Anyone?
I thought it was very complete.
Yeah?
It's long, 272 pages.
I think it was 276. Just saying.
Okay,
Yeah.
I stand corrected.
It doesn't sound like it.
Okay,
Thank you very much.
yeah, so we can take it on.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Take it on the road.
All right, Jim, you're up.
All right, I handed out a sheet to all of you, Mayor, Council, and it has some wonderful little pictures on it like this. Okay, this is very simple. When we get to adoption of SUDAS, there's going to be a number of these that will be part of that, and they will be standards for traffic control. So in the continuing effort to kind of make you aware of all of the things that are in SUDAS, we talked the last time about design of storm sewers and the integral use of the street for storage of that stormwater. This is to just make you aware that there's going to be standards. I think one of the challenges that we have, especially with the newly assigned right-of-way inspector, is that we really don't have any standards out there that we can point to and say, this is what you need to follow. We can suggest it, et cetera, but this will have standards. I think it's really important that you be aware of this. I mean, there are 23 other different standards. There aren't just 4. These are probably the 4 that will be used the most. But there is a large chance that you will hear some complaints about the adoption of these standards. They're too fancy, there's too much, they cost too much, et cetera, et cetera. It's very important that you understand that these are all over Iowa adopted standards. They really aren't that way, and that they will make this a safer place to live and work. And with that, I would entertain any questions you have, because I promised everybody this was gonna be less than 6 minutes. So we're gonna try and beat that.
So are you gonna ask us to effectively pass a policy and say this is the standard? Does
The-
it require council action?
Well, we already
When
approved
the
it.
time comes to adopt SUDAS, you will pass a resolution to adopt SUDAS as the standard for the community. And what I'm doing is trying to make you aware of all of the different things that entails, contains, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
In small bites.
In small 6-minute bites.
Okay.
360 small bites.
I guess I was under the impression we had already approved SUDAS.
No, we have not.
Okay, so
Now, we are using it as a standard. We are suggesting that if anybody asks us what our standards are, we say we're going to adopt SUDAS here pretty soon. But we are working our way through it, and that is a daunting task. It took Davenport over 2 years just to get through the technical details, et cetera, what they wanted to do and what they didn't want to do. I don't think it's going to take us that long. We're much simpler than Davenport is. So, but no, we haven't actually officially formally adopted it.
And having reviewed some of SUDAS, has staff reviewed it and made sure that, are we gonna adopt 100% of it, or we can at least review some of it and, look at some of those
That's
things?
exactly the task. There are some things in here that we will want to accept out
Okay.
because they don't apply.
Common practices or
yeah.
things that you know that we probably wouldn't be successful in.
Right. So that really is the chore, is to figure out what you want to adopt and what you may wish to exempt out of.
Well, I'm just thinking out loud in a sense. So let's say, for example, things on the Fruitland area, for example.
On the
or
what?
in the
Fruitland
south
area.
end side of Muscatine, where we still have, maybe down over by the island, soil is, like I think a Class C soil, I think, where it's more.
Extremely
sand.
sandy.
Sandy,
So
yeah.
SUDAS has certain standards for compactions and for certain,
Right.
needs that you would have that maybe we wouldn't have on Park Avenue.
Yes.
So how would we be then basically saying, how would we adopt that? We would still need to.
We would
make
adopt
some sort of.
we would adopt SUDAS, and then would have a small, hopefully very small document that would specifically identify the things that we either are exempting out, or that we wish to add to, or that we wish to change.
Because SUDAS is what we would have the contractor hold their standards up to,
Right.
correct? And we would say, hey,
So
we're
you,
just coming in here. and
when you would come in,
approving it.
when you would come in as a contractor, we would hand you SUDAS, or we would would say, "So you have to follow SUDAS." And we would hand you the Muscatine special standards, special rules, whatever they are, for SUDAS. And Davenport's was, gosh, I can't remember, 170 pages
Of
of the
exemptions?
exemptions. We're not going to get anywhere near close to that. I think we're going to err on the side of just trying to pick the ones that we know for sure. And if stuff comes to light, you'll see me back here again on a 6-minute presentation going, we made a mistake, we're going to take this out too.
Okay, and I'm good with that. I like the fact that the simple one of like, they're requiring a flagger to be used.
Yes.
In certain areas, you know, that's something that's a big pet peeve of me of
about
during
that.
constructions on, you know, out on the roads. But let's just say hypothetically, somebody needs to replace a new, main, you know, connection for their water. And they
Okay.
have to go out and the plumber has to go out and cut out, you
Part
know,
of the street.
part of the street. Would then he be required to follow SUDAS?
Yes. What he would be required to do,
Because then that's a more
see, okay,
complicated-
top left. That's why I picked these 4. These are probably the most common you would use. So the top left, that's a lane closure, probably, well, and it all depends on how much traffic it is, whether it's a minor street or a collector or something else. But if it was just on a regular residential street, you would use number 4 up there at the top, that standard. So there is not just one standard for everything. Like I said, there's 23 different types of situations that could apply. Some of those we will accept out because I don't believe we have any interstate, and I don't believe we have need to even put that in our standard.
But then they would need to be educated in this as well, too.
We're all going to be that way. But I figured in 6-minute bites it was easier than.
I think it'll be good.
Anyone else?
Thank you.
Sounds good, Jim, thanks.
6.5 minutes.
Did you time it?
I'm just kidding.
All right, our last thing for the evening is reviewing our hard surfacing. Andrew? I didn't think we could escape without a PowerPoint. It's only 3 or 4 slides. Okay.
Mayor, Council, this is an issue we've discussed a number of times, so just kind of bring you all up to date. At the last in-depth, we presented the P and Z's recommendation that we not adjust the standards. I think the consensus at council, at that last council meeting was that you all wanted to review the alternate one that P and Z examined. The other thing we were going to bring back to you is more detail on the portion of city code that requires a 3/4 majority to approve something that P and Z didn't recommend. So that was the number. So what that would mean is for you to adopt a change to it, you would need 6 votes. So that's kind of where we're at. I can kind of go through point by point, kind of the working draft of what P and Z thought was the best practice, but they ultimately decided not to recommend. So it's,
So
we
you
went
did,
through it last meeting, so I don't want to necessarily go through that unless you all wanted to
Right.
tonight.
so you did verify that if council votes to not accept planning and zoning's recommendation, that it takes a supermajority,
3/4, so.
3/4, yeah. Okay. All right, go ahead.
Do you want,
Do we want to see them?
yeah, I guess, okay.
Yes.
Okay, so the draft language that we do have available too, and I think you've all gotten copies of the P and Z packets that included this, would allow for alternates to hard surfacing in the M2 heavy industrial zoning district in areas that are with more than 100 feet from a parcel containing a residence or the public right of way. And they would be required to be buffered from a public street, either by being behind a building or kind of a landscape buffer yard, which would be a tree and some bushes every 25 feet, which is kind of similar to the landscaping that we now require along parking lots. Good example would be the come and go or the new soccer complex are both good examples of the landscape buffer yards that we now require for parking. And that the installation of these types of non-hard surface parking areas would require prior review and approval by the city before they could be installed. A couple performance standards that we would put in there is they'd be maintained free of weeds and standing water. The use of slag for this would be not permitted, and there would also be a prohibition on using these non-hard surfaced outdoor vehicles areas for customer parking, employee parking, loading or unloading of vehicles, or vehicle maintenance. The idea being that these areas should be limited to more kind of the long-term storage of things, and not the type of activity where you have a lot of vehicular movement kicking up dust. So kind of in a nutshell, that would be the draft language. If there's 6 of you that would like to proceed forward, that we can bring that forward in a form where you can take action on it at a future meeting.
So I was the one that actually requested this many months back. So it was more in regards to, semi-storage in particular in this case. For example, H&I's storage, a lot of the stuff in the Progress Park, a lot of the vehicle storage that they have there, and requests just from people in those areas and owners in those areas that were saying, hey, can we look at a way of not requiring concrete in our industrial area that we're at? So it was more from that, from that perspective that I was requesting that. And also having, presented my request to P&Z, they did have some people buy in and then some that did not. And so that was not a super majority that ended up voting against it. It was still had some people that were buying in and some that were just completely hesitant against it. So that was why I still feel that it's important, just because the concerns that I want to keep as much business as we can here locally, and the questions that were brought up and saying, hey, we don't have this draft in West Liberty, we don't have this in Wilton, we don't have this in the county. So I would entertain, I am for us putting some sort of an ability to allow these businesses to have gravel for vehicle storage for semis, and that particular example is what I really called out for, and only in the M2 districts, which would be like the H&Is and the Progress Parks that we have on the south side of town.
And I would mirror that, and I don't know that Santos and I have the exact same opinion on all of it, but close enough that I would support this coming forward.
Yeah.
It's very particular in saying, hey, we're 100 feet away, we don't have homes that we're affecting. This is about businesses and growth, in my perspective. And I respect the planning and zoning, it's just
Yeah, that's basically my end of town too, as far as Progress Park and some of the other trailer storage areas. I don't believe we have any problem with the draft language, the way it's written. I would be totally in favor of that.
My question is there a grandfather clause in this anywhere? For people that already have existing things, are we asking them to do something?
There's a grandfather clause, I believe, in the current
So the
one.
legal nonconforming, which is the technical name for it, that's in all of Title 10, which is zoning. There isn't anything specific about this. So the same legal nonconforming standards that apply to everything else would apply to this, which would be if it was legal at the time of construction, you can continue to maintain it as long as you don't abandon it or expand it. Essentially, is kind of the short version of that.
Is there anywhere, Andrew, and this is just for my own information, when a property transfers from one owner to another, is it possible then to tell the new owner you have to bring this up to code?
So.
Or is that something that's not done?
You can structure it that way. We've talked about some draft, potentially looking at clarifying and redoing some of the legal nonconforming. The way it's written now is the use is basically the use can't be abandoned for more than a year. So the ownership doesn't matter, but it's if one person stops using it, it sits vacant for 2 years, then the grandfathering goes away.
Okay, does it have to be 2 years, or can it be?
It's 1 year, it is, but we have to be able to demonstrate it's
Okay.
been 1 year, which that is kind of a challenge to say, particularly for parking lots, to say, well, as of this date, nobody used it between date X and date Y. That is difficult.
Mm-hmm. Yes, we have a business in the Fourth Ward that has gone out of business, and it had a non-conforming driveway. It has a non-conforming driveway, and I assume that that property's been sold or will be sold shortly. So will the new owners have to then bring that driveway into compliance? Hard surface it, pave it, whatever.
Depends how long that driveway hasn't been used. I don't,
Okay, okay.
if you got, there's a specific
Like
one, I'd
5
be,
or 6 months so far, I think.
I think I might know which one you're talking, but yeah, I can, if you wanna give me the detail, I can get you
Sure,
that
sure,
specific
thank
answer.
you.
So if the use of the property changed, that would also trigger,
Well, we could redo it. The way it currently is non-conforming. It looks as, it uses structures and then building, so, so parking lots would be, it doesn't necessarily matter what the building that it's associated with, as long as that area is used for parking in a continuous way, is the way that our current. Now, we could change that, and that might be a good idea, but that's a separate issue.
Okay.
Right, and Andrew had already reviewed the draft language for a non-conforming use change in a subsequent zoning
Yeah,
ordinance.
no, that'd be something
Update, so that
we'd like to move
will be
forward
coming
later this
forward.
year.
But in this case, it's kind of in reverse, I mean, because you're asking, the code is going frankly backwards in its requirements, from a hard servicing requirement to allowing a dust, not a non-dust-free surface for parking or storage areas. So a grandfathering really, would not really apply in this case. However, I do have some concerns with, where we have enforced hard surfacing in recent years. So right across the street from, one entity where they put 10 acres of concrete in, that business has complied with city code. And so it's really the opposite issue, where you've got businesses that have complied with code, and now we're going in the opposite direction. And they put significant investment into those properties. And then, so it's a different issue, but it is
Right,
it is a concern that I have, where we seem to be going backwards rather than forwards. And I certainly wouldn't compare us to smaller rural communities or the county, where I think it's more comparable to look at cities our own size or larger that have, rather than more of a rural community that allows for these types of standards.
But again, if you take a drive down Progress Park, take a look at how many actually have concrete that you just mentioned, for example, and that one that I just put in, and then how many have gravel. And then I can guarantee you that you'll have the majority that's gonna have gravel, and that's why it's more trying to be consistent in that industrial area. And it's not in an area of saying, or you go to H&I where,
Right.
you have 100+ semis that are on gravel. And so it's more around just allowing them to stay in that zone. And so I understand your comments, and I'm just voicing my opinion from those requests.
Yep.
Anyone else?
So do we need to have a vote, or?
There's no
We're not going to
tonight.
vote. We were
Has-
looking at a,
Has the council already acted on this, and would it take a motion to reconsider?
No, council's not
No.
acted on this. It'd have to come back before city council. We could put a draft ordinance together, but it will require 6 to move forward. If you'd like us to move forward with an item on a future council meeting, or at a future council meeting.
Just to be clear, P and Z voted to, the P and Z vote was to not make any changes in the
That's correct.
existing
It was,
code.
they voted to,
Okay.
Maintain PCC or
maintain our current standards.
current
is-
standards.
So when this comes back before council to make the change, then you're saying that to not take P and Z's recommendation, it's gonna take 6 votes
Correct.
to vote in whatever else,
Change the city code.
yeah.
Correct.
So, I mean, just to provide a little more background, city code provides for any change to the zoning ordinance needs to be reviewed first by the Planning and Zoning Commission. They make a recommendation. council wishes to act contrary to it, then it requires a vote of 3/4 at the council, which is 6 members.
If P and Z had recommended it, it would just take a simple majority?
That's correct.
Okay, that was just, just curiosity.
And that's 3/4 of those present?
No,
No.
The wording, 3/4.
Have to be
Have to
six.
have
6.
six votes.
Yeah.
Okay.
So if you're absent, that's a no vote.
Effectively.
Yes. Would you like us to bring it back for council consideration, or is there an interest in moving forward? Not an interest in moving forward.
I would like to see it come back for a vote.
Well, maybe come back for next month's in depth for us to look at it and review it before we actually table it for a vote. It's kind of like,
It's,
That's this right
that's
here.
the change
That's
right
it.
there.
It would just be put into ordinance format.
Mm-hmm.
We just need, if they want to, majority council wants to bring it back, let's bring it back and run it up the flagpole, see if
Right.
it passes.
I don't always,
So do we,
yeah,
go ahead, Councilman Harvey.
I don't always agree with P and Z's decisions, but in this case, I do agree with their decision to leave it the way it is.
So do we have 4 to bring it back for a vote?
I've got 2,
I've got,
or 3,
I've got-
excuse me, 3.
I've got 3 and
bring it back for a vote.
Councilman Malcolm makes 4.
And I'm not sold on the issue. I'm just willing to bring it back up.
Sure. Apparently, they'd like to have it
My
come
only
back for a
request
vote,
is-
Andrew.
My only request is not
Pick it
do
up.
it on the 20th, because I think we've been paying attention, and the 20th is pretty full or getting full quicker. Can we push it for another date other than the 20th of this month?
Well, I would say, given that this requires 6 votes, it would probably make sense to pick a date where we don't know that where there isn't one we know that one of you will be
Somebody will
absent.
be
because
gone.
This probably is
Sure.
one that needs.
Because it's not going to take long to vote.
Great.
I think we already know where you stand.
Or said.
Thank you, Andrew. All right, we're down to the last thing. Councilman Spread, do you have anything tonight?
Nothing at this time, thank you.
Councilman Harvey?
Nothing tonight, Your Honor.
Councilman Malcolm?
I just want to thank Public Works as usual for their energies in trying to clean up our flood issues as usual. And hopefully this will be the last time this season for this. Thank you guys for all your energy and time. And that's it for me, Your Honor.
Yeah.
Parks and Rec?
Parks and Rec, yes.
Yeah, Parks and Rec, of course.
Councilman Fitzgerald?
Nothing at this time.
Councilwoman Brockert?
I do have a couple of things, Your Honor. I don't know if any one of you watched the 5 o'clock news, but there was an article or a piece on a lady who lost her life over in Bureau County, Illinois, due to hitting a patch of grass clippings on her motorcycle. So, yes, okay. Anyway, it isn't just a lot of blah, 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 and, you know, our ordinance doesn't mean anything. You need to get those grass clippings out of the street because people will die. The other thing is, Riverbend Neighbors is going to meet Monday evening at 7 p.m. down at Fire Station Number 2, and everyone is welcome to attend. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilman Salcedo?
I
She stole your thunder,
was
didn't
actually going
she?
to comment on the grass clippings because I had gotten called on that. But my other question was just maybe, it doesn't have to be this meeting, but maybe the next one, get an update on where we're at on the library, the old library.
The old library, real quick and simple, there's 0 progress on the old library at this point in time.
Are you moving stuff in there for storage?
Somebody was storing something. We had a request,
Maybe we can bring it up next meeting.
I can take a look
Yeah.
at it.
Just give us
but,
the
Okay.
Yep.
the quick and dirty 2-minute.
And Carver as well. We hope to see that go out shortly.
Yeah, that's all I have.
Councilman Brackett?
Well, just that I missed last meeting, I was on vacation, and there was some discussion about the, and I'm not starting a discussion tonight, I just have a request for information to be provided, and not tonight, just in email format. But there was discussion about the Hauser Folium corner and options and/or lack thereof options, and that. Actually, I think I'm kind of glad I wasn't here for that discussion. But what I would request would be that I would like to see the traffic study information that was done originally for that. I'm not sure what the scope is on it. I have some thoughts, and I want to reserve those until after I've looked at that information. So that's the only thing I've got tonight. Thank you. Sure.
Staff?
Just to follow up a little bit more, we do hope to see the Carver Corner RFP go out likely this following week. And you'll see, beginning next week, you'll see Public Works and Parks and Rec staff down on the riverfront doing a lot of dirt moving, and fire department will likely be down there as well. And Nick has rounded up about 60 volunteers to help out on Friday down on the riverfront, which is from KidCorp, which is great. So I think that was a neat, some
This
nice
Friday?
assistance. This coming Friday the 21st?
Oh, the 20, okay. Okay,
Next Friday, sorry, next Friday. Yeah.
okay, I
Yeah.
just wondered.
This coming Friday.
I just want to make one more statement too, that we will be opening Mississippi Drive tomorrow mid-morning, probably after 9 o'clock, somewhere in there. We've got it mostly clean. We got to get the floodgates down, and then that should be back to normal, hopefully for the last time this year.
So you're opening up the floodgates on 2nd?
Yes, tomorrow morning.
Excellent. Thank
5 o'clock in the morning, he's gonna.
Oh, I mean, I did. There was, are you gonna give me the money for going around? I'm like, yeah, right.
I just have a couple of things. I wanted to remind everyone, if you haven't been out to the Art Center lately, they have some really nice new exhibits there that you're not going to want to miss if you have an opportunity to get there. Next, I'd like to thank all of our Father's Day, all of our fathers. Father's Day is on Sunday, and all of us owe a great deal of gratitude to all of our dads and grandpas and brothers and all the father figures in our life. Lastly, I would like to remind everyone that tomorrow is Flag Day, and I would like to share a poem that Linda Cunningham wrote that I thought was quite fitting. Our nation's flag is a stirring sight as it flutters proudly in the breeze. Its colors of blue, red, and white mean so much to you and me. Red stands for courage and hardiness. The white means innocence and purity. Blue is for justice, perseverance, and vigilance in its promise to keep us free. This banner stands for a bountiful land, its government, people, and ideals. The stripes from the 13 colonies stand. Its symbolism is very real. Each state is now represented by a star of white on blue. President Washington first presented the American flag to you. Many brave men have fought and died to protect it from dishonor and disgrace. Wives have mourned and mothers have cried so we could remain the United States. The sight of this banner brings feelings of joy, of courage, pride, and freedom to all, a symbol of our nation in all its glory. On the moon, even, Old Glory stands tall. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Good evening.
Okay.